Introduction. In the United States, we typically speak of three branches of Judaism: Reformed, Orthodox, and Conservative. But this does not tell the whole story. Within each of these branches, we find a range of views and practices. In addition, a number of Jewish movements have emerged that stand outside of the three major branches. Our goal here is to offer a sense of the breadth and diversity within Judaism, with a focus on Jewish groups we encounter in our local community. Reformed Judaism is the largest Jewish movement in the United States and in California. Reformed Judaism and Enlightenment Values. Our survey of Reformed Judaism starts, in Europe, with the Enlightenment and political liberalism. After the French Revolution, in 1791, French Jews were officially afforded legal equality. This political development emerges in a larger context of social and cultural change known as the Enlightenment. For most of Jewish history in Europe, being Jewish meant holding together as a community, a strategy for surviving in a hostile social environment. So in a climate of greater civil liberty, and with growing respect for secularism as a civic value, increasing numbers of Jewish people see cultural assimilation as both feasible and advantageous. Enlightenment values also critique religious belief. Proponents of Enlightenment values proclaim reason itself as a new religion. Some religious leaders, both in Christian and Jewish circles, critique belief in supernatural forces and reinterpret their religious traditions to hew more closely to scientific and secular perspectives. In Judaism, for example, Moses Mendelssohn, a German Jewish scholar and philosopher, promotes cultural assimilation of Jewish people into the nations where they live. He sees secularism as a civil emancipation for religious minorities. At the same time, he develops a rationalist account of religion that views religion as a natural phenomena that encompasses any system of belief. He does not see divine revelation as exclusive to the Jewish people, but views Jewish law as one manifestation of religion, particular to the Jewish people. In the United States, a group of Reformed rabbis adopted the Pittsburgh Platform in 1885. This is a statement of practices and values for Reformed Judaism. It speaks positively about Judaism's distinctive place among the religions of the world, while also adopting a universalistic view of religion. There is one God, one humanity, one religion, and it is best exemplified in Judaism. The Pittsburgh Platform accepts historical and literary critical studies of Scripture and acknowledges the authority of reason as a guide for Jewish practice, saying that Judaism is a progressive religion, ever striving to be in accord with the postulates of reason. In a nod to Enlightenment tendencies to demythologize religion, they affirm the immortality of the soul while rejecting belief in heaven and hell, and reinterpret Jewish messianic expectation as a call for universal justice that people themselves forge in history through civic engagement. They de-emphasize the identity of Jews as a chosen people set apart from other peoples, and instead speak of Judaism as a network of congregations within American society. Equality emerges as a key value among Reformed Jews. In 1935, Regina Jonas is the first woman ordained a Jewish rabbi, but at that time no congregation would hire her. So her professional career focuses on hospital chaplaincy and Jewish education. She innovates the field of Jewish education by introducing contemporary pedagogical techniques to Jewish religious instruction. In November of 1942, Nazi authorities incarcerate her in the Theresienstadt concentration camp, where she continues to serve her fellow inmates by giving sermons. She is executed at Auschwitz in October of 1944. Value for humanism and equality continues to inspire Jewish action for civil rights, We see this in contemporary advocacy for the rights of LGBTQ people. Reformed Jewish practices. Reformed Judaism, like many religious movements, has internal diversity. We find a great deal of common ground among their members on these practices. Jewish ethics takes precedence over Jewish beliefs and ritual practices. Torah, then, has more prominence than Talmud, and Reformed Jewish rabbis draw from the ideals represented in Exodus and by the biblical prophets to advocate for an ethical monotheism characterized by a strong humanitarian impulse and a universal scope of concern. Reformed Jews often reinterpret Jewish messianic expectation as work for the establishment of a kingdom of truth, justice, and peace among all men. Many Jewish people become dedicated proponents of civil rights and human rights. Jewish people traditionally identify 613 mitzvot, or commandments of halakha, the law of Jewish practice. The commandments include both ritual and ethical requirements. Many Reformed Jews set aside the ritual commandments, including the rules concerning food known as kashrut, or see their observance as a matter of personal choice. Reformed Jewish congregations adapt practices of Jewish prayer to make the rituals accessible to a broader audience. Music in a Reformed congregation tends to reflect the musical styles of the countries where they are located. In the U.S., choral music accompanied by an organ becomes common in Reformed Jewish services through the 19th and for the first half of the 20th centuries. But in the mid-20th century, folk music grows in prominence, and by the 1960s, a younger generation of cantors and rabbis who had had formative experiences at summer camps for Jewish youth introduced more popular music styles to their congregations. Reformed Jewish congregations use the same Siddur, the Jewish book of prayer used by the other branches of Judaism. But during prayer services, Reformed congregations use vernacular language for more of the service. They also tend to cover less of the Siddur and to spend more time explaining the prayers and rituals to a congregation where people have varying levels of familiarity with Hebrew. Reformed Jewish congregations tend to call their houses of worship temples, which reflects a diminished cultural priority on longing to return to Jerusalem. They are also less likely to say they believe in a supernatural Messiah or the bodily resurrection. In summary, Reformed Judaism emerges in 18th century Europe during a time when Enlightenment ideals of secularism and universal rights make assimilation by Jewish people into the societies where they live seem both feasible and potentially advantageous. In Enlightenment Europe, respect for reason as a transcendent source of ethical, legal, and scientific norms becomes a prominent value. Among Christian and Jewish leaders, Enlightenment proponents reinterpret their traditions and reform religious practice to reflect Enlightenment ideals. As Reformed Judaism emerges, it emphasizes Jewish ethics while de-emphasizing observance of Jewish ritual laws and supernatural beliefs. Reformed Jewish ethics has a deep commitment to humanitarian values and a universal scope of concern. Jewish people have been committed supporters of human rights, civil rights, and humanitarian organizations. Reformed congregations use the same Siddur, or book of prayer, that Jewish people use throughout the world. But during services, they translate more of the prayers into vernacular languages. Reformed Jewish congregations also use styles of music that reflect the culture where they live.